It's Tuesday, September 26, 2023. We are in a Taylor Swift free zone, and it's also time for the Knee Jerks podcast, Detroit Sportscast with Nick, and Big Al. I got the title right this time. I am the Big Al of the equation. Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me always are my compadres on this podcast. Of course, let's introduce the newer guy, and that would be Nick Milanovich. Nick, how's things out in the West Coast?
Oh, well, we're back to our normal Seattle weather. It's just pouring rain today and yesterday.
Yes.
And the day before.
Yeah.
And tomorrow. And the next day.
Yeah, and you were just telling us you were just watching limbs fly by your window out there.
Yeah, so like around our house and in this neighborhood, we have 100-foot tall evergreens, like really close to the house. And winter time, and when it gets windy, limbs just start crashing down on the roof of the house, and you think the whole damn thing's going to collapse on you. So it's a serious consideration out here.
So if Nick suddenly disappears from the podcast, I think we know why. So a limb has come crashing down on his house. So
or bears in my yard. So.
There you go. And always with us is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things. He's also a rambling man, and that would be Greg Eno of let him introduce his Substack. Greg, what's up?
Please. I am Greg Eno from my gregeno.substack.com.
Yeah, I keep wanting to say out of bounds, but it's Greg.
It's still called that. It's still called that. But the URL is gregeno.substack.com. Please subscribe. I come into your inbox every Monday, pretty much. Most recently, Henry Boucher. I wrote about Henry because he died last week, and he was a Red Wing from the 70s who, as I dug more into his career and his life, was pretty fascinating, especially how he started as one of the best, still considered one of the greatest hockey players ever to come out of Minnesota. He's in the United States Hockey Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, his career was cut short, as you know, Al, by Dave Forbes back in '75, and he never really recovered from that. But then he got his life back together and ended up really being a champion for Native American causes and left a big imprint in the state of Minnesota. So I wrote about Henry. He died last week at age 72. Played for the Red Wings for a couple of years. Of course, wore that red headband on the ice. So check me out there. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno, and follow the Knee Jerks, of course, on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Nick, I want to ask you a question real quick. It always amazes me when I think about it that the Mariners. They have an outdoor ballpark. They don't have a dome out there, do they? The Mariners. They play.
It's retractable.
Oh, it is retractable. Okay.
Yeah.
Because think of all the rain out there. How do they get their home schedule in? How do they get their home schedule in every year?
Yeah, it is retractable.
It is retractable. Okay, that answered that question. Okay.
It's not for the Seahawks though.
No, right. Well, yeah. Right. Yeah.
But for the Mariners, for sure.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, carry on.
All right. Well, with that, like I said, we have a lot to talk about with the Tigers. Hold on. I'll get you there. I'll get you there.
Right,
I'm segueing my way through here. Like I said, we have a lot to talk about. The Tigers made some personnel moves in their front office this past couple weeks. Obviously, the Red Wings are starting their preseason. We have a lot of Lions to talk about. But first, which is what Greg wanted to get to, is I believe we need to play the birthday game.
Yes, but I also want to promote our little schedule here.
Yes.
We will not be with you on October the 10th. Al's going to be out of town, so we won't be coming to you on the 10th. However, to make up for that gap, we will be coming to you on October 24th with special guest Keith Gave, former Red Wings beat writer for the Free Press and author of 3 really good hockey books that we will talk about. One about Vladdy Konstantinov, one about the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, and about the Russian Five. And Keith wrote 3 books on those subjects. And we will also talk about the current state of hockey, the current state of the Red Wings, what he's been up to since he's left the beat. And so we're excited about that. And then 2 weeks after that, November 7th, Siddy Hall, our old friend, NBA stats guru, will be here to kind of talk about. It will be about maybe half a dozen games into the Pistons season at that point. We'll talk about the Pistons and his takes on that and the NBA. So that's what's on the docket. No show on the 10th, 24th, Keith Gave, and November 7th, Siddy Hall. So that's the upcoming schedule. I can't believe I'm talking about November
No kidding. Jesus.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I am. But the aforementioned birthday game. Let's go right to it. We got a lot of stuff on the docket, but before we get into any of it, we will play Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al and Nick a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if those guys, if one of those guys can name this person within the first two clues, he'll receive a brand new BlackBerry. A BlackBerry.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember those? Yeah. I had one.
No, I was never so lucky, so I can't wait.
This person, guys, is making his name in baseball. He was born in the state in 1964. He's currently still active in the game. He was a player, but is still active in the game, very much so in the National League, very much so. Was an outfielder, and what can I say about him? He was a bench coach for two teams. No longer bench coach. Much higher than that now.
Kirk Gibson.
No.
No. It was took a shot. Your turn, Nick.
1964.
1964.
Yeah.
So Gibson would have had to been way older than that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know the National League very well, so.
Currently a manager in the National League.
Okay, manager in the National League.
No. Pressure's on.
Oh, who's the Dodgers manager? Roberts, is that right?
Oh, that's a good guess. Dave Roberts. That's a great guess because that's about the same age.
Yeah.
No, that's a good guess. It's not Dave Roberts, but that's a good guess. It's a good guess.
All right. Well, with that, we will return to the birthday game later in the podcast, but we need to we need to talk about what's going on with the Detroit Lions, since they are honestly the hot topic in the area, and they lost to the team Nick lives nearest, the Seahawks, last week. But this past weekend they beat the Falcons. But since we last spoke, when we last talked about the Lions, guys, they had just come off that victory over Kansas City on Thursday Night Football, the opening game of the NFL season. And since that time, as I said, there was a hard-hitting 37-31 loss to the Seahawks at home. And the Seahawks seemingly have the Lions' number. And thank goodness that I just almost kind of silly, but that loss also kind of immediately put the kibosh on the Lions and their fans wearing blue ski mask as a villain or whatever it was. And then the third game of the year, another home game, also in the previous game, it could be argued against the Seahawks that Dan Campbell was aggressive to a fault. He had a few questionable fourth down calls, but still a close game that the Lions could have won. But this past Sunday, there was a relatively easy 20-6 win over the Falcons. Defense played great. Offense just played good enough. Motor City Dan Campbell is far more conservative with his play, probably because he didn't need to be aggressive, because the Lions, for the most part, pretty much dominated all facets of that game. That win against the Falcons came despite the Lions missing 3 starters on their offensive line, and they had in-game injuries to their backups, which resulted in them playing a 5th-round rookie offensive lineman, Colby Sorsdal, at right tackle. He's essentially their 4th stringer, and he may get some playing time this coming Thursday when they play Green Bay. But Greg, I'll start with you. Especially, I think at 2-1, I think most fans pretty much expected them to be 2-1. I just think they probably didn't expect it to be in the order how it came.
Well, I don't know about that, because, you figure that most people figure the Chiefs was a loss.
Yeah.
Remember, this is before the season. I mean, we were talking when we were last together. I told you guys that I don't trust the Seahawks. I don't trust Pete Carroll's teams, even though they had a stinker in their opening week against the Rams. I said, be careful. These are the Seahawks. They never are an easy out. And then you look at Atlanta, which, that team is giving the Lions some fits. Now, granted, 2 of those 3 games were at home, but
right.
I don't know if it was a slam dunk that they would be 2-1. But yeah, I mean, after they beat Kansas City, and you mentioned the blue ski masks and everything, everybody got a little bit, as usual, too full of themselves and a little bit too cocky, and the fans, the players, everybody got a little bit too much Kool-Aid there. And Geno Smith carved them up. And you mentioned Campbell, maybe some questionable fourth down decisions and so forth. But the Falcons, though, all week, Al and Nick, I kept reading that Art Smith was going to run the ball right down the Lions' throats all week. That's all I read about. Well, the Falcons' offensive running game is too strong, and they're just going to run it right down their throats. And anyway, 40. How many yards of rushing?
I think it was 20 rushes for 44 yards.
Yeah, I mean, and then this what's this guy's name? Ritter. I don't know about him. The Falcons were a good tonic, as it turned out, even though they won the first two games. They got lucky against Green Bay. You could make a case in week 2. They won that game, but they don't have playmakers. At least the offensive scheme that I saw on Sunday. Smith, or whoever's calling the plays, I think it's Smith. Smith's. It's funny. They got a weird arrangement in Atlanta. He calls the plays, even though he has an OC. So I don't know what that's all about. Yeah. Anyway, you can tell they don't have any playmakers, or they don't trust Ritter deep. One of the two, because the Falcons were down by 3 scores in the fourth quarter, and they marched down the field, hinking and dunking like the old West Coast offense.
Yes,
like they were just down by 1 score, like they were just trying to play for a field goal or a touchdown. And they took, I don't know how many minutes off the clock, getting 5 to 6
minutes.
Hanging bounds. Ritter didn't take hardly any deep shots. I don't know what that was all about, but clearly what it showed me is that if you shut down the running game, the Falcons running game, that's how you're going to win, because Ritter's not going to beat you.
Nick, what's your take on this start so far?
Yeah, I'm kind of not surprised it's 2-1. They're 2-1. I thought the loss would be more so to Kansas City, probably. It would have been more likely. But honestly, I thought the Lions would show up better against the Seahawks. Yeah. And I even predicted them to beat the spread. So if you ever bet based on my advice, you're a moron. So don't. And
I think we have a new bit. We'll ask Nick to pick a game against the spread every podcast.
And do the opposite?
Yeah.
And if I win, I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket.
There you go.
But you know what? I watched a bit of the Seahawks the first game against the Rams, and they didn't play that great. But I should have known better. Like, Pete Carroll's teams have been around for like I think it's his 14th season now, something like that.
Yeah.
And his teams grind. They're not necessarily glamorous, but they're rock steady. They play their game. They grind away, and they ground away at the Lions. You could honestly say the Lions fared better against them this year than they did last year, because I think they gave up even more points to the Seahawks last season.
Yeah.
So only 37 this time, and that's what Seattle did, though. They just kind of ground away at the Lions, and the Lions' offense was it was okay, but kind of meh at the same time. So and I heard kind of the same things about Atlanta and whatever their offense was. Their running back was going to, run wild on them.
Bijan Robinson. Yeah. He was taken ahead of Gibbs. So.
Okay. Yeah. And
so that was the big matchup people talked about going into the game.
The Lions played good. They played well, and their defense was solid. And I think Atlanta's offense stunk. Their offense was terrible, at least last Sunday. I didn't watch the first 2 games, but on Sundays against the Lions, their passing was terrible. The quarterback ran out of time during one snap, so there was a delay of game in there. So, and kind of when they're sort of disoriented like that, the defense hopefully takes advantage of that, and not like the same old Lions. They took advantage of it. They played well. They had some strong rookie play, which was pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, so, which we will get into, the rookie play. That's definitely a big topic of discussion. Greg, what were your thoughts on that, on the blue ski mask thing? I thought it kind of had another one bites the dust written all over it, and that's kind of how it ended up.
Yeah, that was the take that I took on it the Monday before the game. The Monday before the Falcons game, the day after the Seahawks game. I did just that. I made the comparisons to Another One Bites the Dust on the Substack, and it did remind me a whole lot about that. And they got really full of themselves after the I think 3-0 start. They recorded this tune, and it's one thing it's one thing if the fans are going to get, if the fans were going to get involved in this whole ski mask thing, that's fine.
Yeah.
But where I draw my line is when the players start that kind of stuff. The players should stay out of the snake oil business. Just let if there's a local sports talk show host that wants to get everybody riled up, if there's somebody on social media that wants to get everybody riled up and say, hey guys, wear ski masks. But when you get the players doing it, and I appreciate CJ Gardner-Johnson's, he wants to be a leader. He may only be with the Lions for this year, but he wants to be a leader. Ironically, he got hurt. He didn't play, but I don't know. I feel better that kind of stuff is organic. The kind of when you get the players going on social media, say wear your ski mask, and I don't know. It just, to me, as soon as he did that, because when the Lions came out, that Another One Bites the Dust song in 1980, even as a 17-year-old at the time, I said they're done, they're cooked. This is going to backfire, and it did. They got 4-0 and they went 5-7 the rest of the way, missed the playoffs. And that stupid time. Mighty Clark did not want them to record that song, but they recorded it anyway. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, who can stop Jimmy Spider-Man Allen? So, oh my goodness! But we should talk, as Nick alluded to, was the Lions rookies really seem to be paying dividends right now. It's as I put in the show notes, it's controversial, but it was controversial, their first 2-round picks, because the pundit class of the NFL was all about positional value and saying the Lions they took low value positions at high draft picks, because they took a running back, they took a tight end, and they and a linebacker, and obviously a DB, but we'll get into all that. But yeah, especially in the first round where they took Jamal Gibbs as a running back and a linebacker out of Iowa, Jack Campbell, which are considered lower value positions in the NFL. But the guy who's really stood out, and they've all produced, and no complaints there, but we really need to start with Brian Branch, who has pretty much become their nickel corner. And he never, at this point, I don't think he's ever going to leave the field again, the way the guy's been playing. In that Branch was projected to be a first-round pick, somehow fell to the Lions in the second round. He happily scooped them up. In 3 games, Branch, guys, has done nothing but stuff the box score full of stats. And Sunday against Atlanta, he was freaking everywhere. He led the Lions of 11 tackles, 3 for loss. Had 2 pass deflections. Obviously, he had that pick 6 against Kansas City on the opener. He's literally maybe even better than Aiden Hutchinson at this point. He might be the best player on the Lions defense, and I think you could argue that because he's obviously Hutchinson is is a pass rusher first and foremost, but Branch is playing the run. He's playing the pass. He's all over the field, and he's honestly becoming that impact defensive back in that, at least so far. I mean, we're talking small sample sizes, but you get vibes of, say, Ed Reed, of that kind of player. And if you have a guy like that in your defensive backfield, you got a goddamn all-pro back there, and he's playing one like one right now. And he's getting raves from a lot of the analysts out there who, who have been watching tape of him, saying the guy just doesn't make mistakes. He is just a high IQ defensive ball player. Sam Laporta, who was, and when you go into how the draft fell, the only reason the Lions got Laporta is because they traded down in the first round and got this extra pick in the second round. And he has become Goff's probably his favorite target behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. He caught 8 passes for 84 yards, including, I believe, a 49-yard TD pass on Sunday. He has 18 catches in his first 3 games, which is an NFL record for rookie tight ends. Especially, this is a position where rookies traditionally are slow to adjust to the game, and Laporta has just hit the ground running so far. Jahmyr Gibbs, who stepped in for an injured David Montgomery, is the RB1. 17 rushes for 80 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, including 37 on the big drive that clinched the win when Jared Goff showed us some wheels on that 3-yard run. And Jack Campbell had his first career sack and had 3 tackles. And he's starting to get more and more playing time. All of a sudden, the linebackers are starting to look like a strength. And both Branch and Laporta were nominated for NFL Rookie of the Week. Those two, the 2 second-round picks, are looking like they may ultimately be the true breakout stars of this draft. So, Nick, you brought up the rookies. What are you thinking?
I gotta say, and I usually don't say this about, okay, I've never said this about the Lions, but they drafted really well. I think they are approaching the draft really smart. And in my professional life, I work in innovation and inventions, and part of that of doing really something new or being successful is going against conventional wisdoms and dogma. That whole positional value bullshit is dogma. People talk about it like it's some sort of it's one of the tablets that God gave to Moses. But if you pick a guy in a first round and he's a bust, was that value? Or if you pick a guy in the first round and he's a starter for you, that's value to me. It's hard enough to get a guy that will be on your team and contribute, no matter where you pick him. So I don't mind that they picked up Gibbs. Let me get back to Gibbs in particular in a second, because I had some thoughts and questions on him. But these other guys are playing great. Yeah. Honest to God, the fact that they're finding them not in the first round, but in later rounds, that shows you that the scouting department and the war room, I guess, if you want to call it that, has a plan, and they know what they're picking well. They're doing good evaluations of players. So that, it's, I guess, easier to pick somebody who's successful if he's a first round pick than it is, third, fourth, and fifth. So that's a sign of a good kind of a scouting department. So, but with Gibbs, I was kind of wondering this. I didn't watch him in college, but I did watch him in the Kansas City game, and I thought, holy shit, this guy's fast. Yeah. I wonder though, at least for the first 3 games, is there a better way to use them? And I think even one of the announcers on last week's game saying, they're still trying to figure out how to really use them, because this kid, Montgomery, looks more like, down the middle power runner. Yeah,
downhill guy. Yeah.
Right. And but Gibbs looks like a track star. I mean, he's fast. At least that's the impression I got out of him. It's like in his, running into the big pile, the way to, use his skills the best. I don't know. So, I mean, they haven't had a great running back since Barry Sanders. Well, we're spoiled having watched Barry Sanders. So, so there's that too. But he could be a really good player too. I think they picked well. The fact that there are 5 of them are actually playing. Out of how many did they have? 8? Picks this year, something around that. That's impressive.
And there's still Hendon Hooker, who's currently on IR, who could very likely be the QB of the future for this franchise. That's yet to be determined, but he was a first round value they picked up in the 3rd round due to his knee injury. I like how you put it. The Lions zigged when the league is zagging, and a lot of times that puts you can get ahead of the curve, so to speak. And it looks like at least in the Lions case, they wanted to take a bunch of guys who were ready to play immediately. And oftentimes, especially when you're talking quarterbacks and wide receivers and tackles, those are usually the guys in defensive ends. If you're talking about first-round value guys, oftentimes they aren't ready to be productive right away, unlike these guys. Greg, what are your thoughts on the Lions' so far impressive rookie class?
Well, they are. I mean, Branch, I swear to God, he made every tackle. It seemed like he made every single tackle. I know he didn't, but it seemed like he made every single tackle in that game. They were calling his number a lot on that broadcast, and he was all over the place. And the thing that is impressive about that is that that's not an easy position to come in as a rookie and excel at. And And it, you know, he mentioned he's the nickel guy, and because he's the nickel guy, he could be covering any number of different types of receivers
Right.
in any given play, and he's definitely, like you said, Al. You know, you don't know when he'll ever come off the field if he's playing this well. Jason McCourty, who played cornerback in the NFL for 13 years, does a thing, I guess, every week on the NFL show. He ranks the DBs for the week, power rankings, just the DBs. And he had Brian Branch after week 3, number 1.
Yeah.
Number 1 in the entire league. Best defensive back in the league, according to Jason McCourty. Branch is definitely a find. But this Sam Laporta, now you got to go back to last year when the Lions let go of TJ Hawkinson, and this is something that the folks who follow the Lions definitely talk about this, but it's not really been talked about too much in NFL circles. Even after Hawkinson signed his big extension with the Vikings, is that the decision to let Hawkinson go and not give him that money is now looking even better with this Laporta guy. Another kid out of Iowa, another tight end out of Iowa. I think he's just as good, if not better, than Hawkinson.
I think he's better. I think because he gets yards after catch.
He gets yards after catch. To me, he seems he's like, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he seems faster than Hawkinson. He seems more athletic than Hawkinson. This is not taking anything away from Hawkinson, who's a very good player.
Yeah. But
Laporta, the Lions haven't really missed a beat since they got rid of Hawkinson. They didn't miss him all that much last year because the tight end play last year, tight end by committee last year was okay. But now with Laporta is the unquestioned starter. And that's a position now. You mentioned a few minutes ago about some positions being devalued. The tight end position is kind of making a comeback in terms of it being, very highly valued, with Kelsey and so forth. We can go all the way back to Tony Gonzalez in those days. The tight end position, maybe even more so, guys, than the running back position. Nick mentioned, we haven't seen a running back around here, really an all-pro type guy since Barry Sanders. That's true. I don't know that you need to have an all-pro running back, frankly, in this day and age, but having an all-pro tight end, that's a big deal. And so another thing too, real quick about Gibbs. Nick mentioned, the Lions not being sure about how to use him. The thing about him, though, that does scare me a little bit, he does not impress me in the pass catching. I know they haven't thrown a lot to him. He doesn't seem to have great hands, at least not yet. Maybe he will, because if you're going to use him in open space and create those mismatches against a linebacker or somebody like that, he's got to catch the ball in space, or not even in space. He's got to catch the ball in traffic too. He's got to be able to catch the ball in those little bubble screens where there's not a lot of room to maneuver. He's got to get his hands on the ball and catch it. And he's not doing that right now. His production in that regard has been pedestrian. But when he did have a really good final drive on Sunday against Atlanta when the Lions kind of salted the game away. And I think it was a 22-yard run that got him down to the 7-yard line where he showcased some of that speed that Nick was talking about. But not only just the speed, but he does have some elusiveness, and he can break some tackles. Nick mentioned the downhill style of Montgomery, and he's right. But Gibbs can do a little bit of that too. He's got a little bit of that kid can run over you a little bit too. Maybe not as much as Montgomery. Maybe he's not a between the tackles guy. But Gibbs can get some tough. He did it against Atlanta. He converted some plays where the Falcons knew the Lions would prefer to run the ball rather than pass it because of the situation. And Gibbs, sometimes without a whole lot of help, got those yards.
I think you're right, Greg. Number one, about maybe his pass catching is a little meh, because he did drop some passes in the Falcons game. Although I will say, I think between his first game against Kansas City, and through game 3, I think he's progressively getting better. So maybe it's just a matter of time to get used to the offense and to start clicking. And I think the Lions also had a couple of their linemen out too. Like, right. I don't know if, that may give the place a different rhythm. I think Sewell was on the left side instead of the right. And so he got caught on some penalties and getting used to the left side a little bit. And so there were some adjustments needed to be made, but we'll see. I mean, 3 games into his NFL career, so
Yeah.
it could go a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's and I like how Greg brings up tight ends. So at one point, Greg, I know you'd remember this, is that the Lions at one point had a reputation for always having a good tight end. I mean, Ron Kramer, Charlie Sanders, David Sloan, David Hill. I mean, these guys were all Pro Bowlers. Yeah, Ebron. But all these guys were either all pros, Pro Bowls. They were high-end tight ends, and the Lions, have been trying to find that guy again ever since. Like Nick just brought up Eric Ebron. There was Brandon Pettigrew, T.J. Hawkinson. They were decent players, but I don't think they really none of them ever really lived up to their draft status, because like the 3 I just mentioned were all first-round picks, and none of them ever became that Travis Kelce type guy that they always wanted. They may have that in Sam Laporta. Again, small sample sizes, but from all signs, this guy is going to catch a shit ton of passes because Jared Goff just loves this guy, and he's looking for him. If Amon Ryan open, he's looking for Laporta. So, yeah. But it's also interesting when we're talking about this draft. Remember last year's guys? You remember last year's rookie star everybody loved, Malcolm Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. He's literally an afterthought this year because they've gotten so much better on the defensive side of the ball.
I think he's more on special teams now.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw him on special teams a couple times on Sunday.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Campbell is the thing I like about Campbell is he doesn't seem to make a lot of mistakes. He doesn't seem to be out of position all too often. He doesn't whiff on tackles. He's not. He may not ever be, frankly, a Pro Bowl player. Mm-hmm. Not everybody can make the Pro Bowl, of course.
Right.
But a good, solid 3-down guy. That you don't have to worry about too much. Sometimes it's enough just to not worry about a guy.
Yeah.
Not worry about if he's going to be out of position or if he's going to be. That was always the thing on Jared. Jared Davis, right? He was always criticized for his pass coverage and was out of position, and I had the same kind of concerns about Alex Anzalone, to be frank with you. But I think he's gotten better. Anzalone's gotten better.
Yeah.
But a guy like Campbell, you don't need him to be a Pro Bowl guy necessarily. Just a nice, solid guy that you can rely on. Sometimes it's enough not to make mistakes than to make the great plays all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing we get used to with like same old lines, right? It used to be just stupid mistakes that would always kill them. I mean, especially late in games, just like dumb things. And these guys aren't doing that.
Right.
I mean, they aren't. I mean, fine, they get called on a penalty or whatever, but it's not like a really dumb penalty.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like, where the hell did this come from? Like,
right.
You take one too many shots to the head, kind of, dumb move.
Right.
So.
All right. With that, we need to talk about what's going on in the NFC North, because all of a sudden it kind of looks like a 2-team race already, guys. The Packers are 2-1. They had a ridiculous comeback on Sunday, scoring 18 fourth-quarter points to erase a 17-0 deficit and beat the Saints 18-17. Meanwhile, the Vikings are now 0-3 as their 2022 fluke luck in one-score games has come back to bite them in the ass because they don't have it anymore, as they have started 2023 by losing 3 consecutive one-score games. Actually, now they've lost.
You said that would happen, Al Beaton. Beaton, you said that would happen.
Yes, I did. And actually, it goes back to 4 in a row because they also lost their playoff game. And the 0-3 Bears, they suck. They have been outscored 106-47. Who knows what's going on at the quarterback position? The defense, the coordinators there's a huge mess in the coaching staff right now. They don't know what they're going to do with Justin Fields. It's just an ugly situation there. As the former monsters of the midway, they have now lost 13 straight, and they were blown out 41-10 by the Chiefs. And that was actually a 41-0 game, so they got a couple garbage time scores. But guys, Nick, this looks like a 2-team race all of a sudden. We're only 3 games into the season, and we have a big matchup Thursday night between when the Lions go to Lambeau. Yeah,
it kind of doesn't surprise me. I I didn't think the Bears were going to go anywhere. They just got a new coach, and they were already a dumpster fire, and just nothing's changing for them. So I kind of would have discounted them. I thought maybe they would be a little bit more competitive, but they stink. And Minnesota, I think, could always go either way.
Yeah.
To me.
I just can't get behind a team led by Kirk Cousins. I've never been sold on him.
I think someone mentioned his stats, and I think his stats are pretty good, but overall the team is just not getting it done.
Yeah.
The Green Bay thing, though, doesn't completely surprise me because some of it has to do with, we have these players at this time. They used to have Aaron Rodgers, and so you kind of give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt that they're going to do well. But the Green Bay Packers as an organization has been solid for a long, long time. They've put out competitive teams for long periods of time. I think the last time they really stunk was before Brett Favre. That was that's 30 years ago.
Right.
So, good organizations will find ways to put a competitive team on the field. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers fall into that category too.
Right.
They may not win the Super Bowl, but they're not going to be, a doormat either. So it doesn't surprise me that, now and the Lions, sometimes there was talk, at least among, the fan base, like, it's, theirs to win. It's like, no, these other teams are going to be competitive. You have to earn that division title. So, and you're seeing that. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 2-team race.
Yeah. Yeah. Greg, are you buying into this already, a 2-team race going into week 4 of the NFL season?
Yeah, I am. Because we all discounted the Bears, like Nick said, we all discounted the Bears anyway. So now you're down to 3 teams. And the Vikings thing doesn't surprise me in the least. And they got a good team. I'm not suggesting they're a bad football team, but that kind of stuff, Al, cardiac kids type stuff like the Browns used to do. And
we saw that with the Lions like 5-6 years ago. Stafford had all these comebacks.
Or a year where you happen to
it's just not
right. Or like a season where you win the turnover battle every game, and that's great. Right. That's great, and ride that as long as you can. But it's not, like you said, not sustainable. It doesn't carry over year to year. And this is the NFL. You're not going to win. You can't do that in the NFL. You can't. I mean, it's great when you do. Don't get me wrong. It's great when you do win those games, but you can't go in the off season expecting it's going to happen again. And in the NFL, so many games, as you know, are decided by one score. And so to expect that those games are always going to go in your favor, every year is unrealistic. Now, and so, no, this does not surprise me, and I'm with Nick about the Packers. They're like the Seahawks to me. I never trust them. I never trust the Packers for they're like a villain in a horror movie. They're never dead. They're never dead. And this game on Thursday is going to be a dogfight. I mean, you mentioned the comeback against the Saints, but they also blew one. Against the Falcons the week before that. Again, that's the NFL. That is the NFL right there. But I mean, what's going on in Chicago though is I made a comment on Twitter the other day. I've been following the NFL for 53 years, and I don't remember ever the Bears ever having sustained good quarterback play for like 3 or more years in a row. And in 53 years, it's been a bunch of garbage. Those fans in Chicago are just like the Jets fans with Zach Wilson. The Bears fans, they're burning Justin Fields jerseys. I've seen now. They're done with Justin Fields, and just like they were done with who's the guy before him, Mariski. What's the guy's name?
Trubisky.
Yeah, Trubisky. They're done with him, and they're done with the guy before him, and the guy before him. They haven't had a good. I mean, even Jim McMahon, when they won the Super Bowl in '85, they're only Super Bowl that they won. It was not because of Jim McMahon.
He was a game manager. He really was.
It was about the defense. Jim McMahon was a pedestrian average quarterback. You look at his numbers, he was average at best. That team was because of the defense. They didn't give up any points.
Right.
So that's why they won.
Yeah.
And when I think
Yeah.
2006, when they went to the Super Bowl, I can't remember who the quarterback was. Was it
Grossman, wasn't it?
Yeah, Rex Grossman.
Rex Grossman.
Really?
Oh my God. Yes.
Really? That was another team built on defense with
Yeah.
Urlacher and all those guys. So those poor fans in Chicago. I mean, that's just. And there's all that other off the field stuff going on. Didn't their offensive coordinator or defense coordinator get his house raided or something weird like that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes. There's something squirrely shit going on with him.
I think the reports were that like the FBI raided his house and then the facility, but that was some kind of bogus report. But something was going on with the defensive coordinator, and he resigned.
I believe there was some harassment or something like that. Who had something's going on, and then Justin Fields made some snide comments that he had to walk back about the coaching. It's just an ugly, ugly situation in Chicago right now. And as I saw one of the pundits online say it, the Bears are the new Lions. How's that for a backhanded compliment to Detroit?
Oh, God. Yeah,
at least the Lions aren't being brought up in these kind of discussions anymore.
Well, they can have it, but they have to do this for another 60 years before they become Lions.
Yeah. Well, they're getting there, so
they've got the right dysfunction. It's kind of like
exactly.
The patina is setting in nicely, right?
Yes, but this is something I wanted to ask you guys. I didn't throw this in the show notes, but I was, as I told you before we started recording, I spent the majority of my Sunday traveling back from Traverse City back to Southeast Michigan. So I listened to the majority of the game on the radio. I didn't get to see any of the game till I walked in the house with maybe, there might have been 6 or 7 minutes left in the game. And you guys watched it. I listened to the majority of it. And I felt like it was two completely different games. By listening to it on the radio, listening to Dan Miller and Lomas Brown, I got the impression that it was this really close. It was this real game that the Lions were just struggling to win, and it was this, they just couldn't put away the Falcons. And then when I see people who actually watched the game and had all the visual clues, it was the headlines were, Lions dominate the Falcons. I was like, what game did I listen to? Because I didn't, over the radio, it didn't come across as the Lions essentially doing what they wanted to do with the Falcons. Yet people who watched the game, that's the impression they got. So I wanted to ask you guys, Nick, did you get that impression, or is it just in my head or something?
I think it was like somewhere in between. They played a good, solid game. I think they picked it up if I'm not mistaken, in the second half.
Yeah.
And the Falcons were completely ineffective. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'd consider completely dominating, but I mean, the Falcons played terrible and the Lions played well. So if you call that dominating, okay, fine.
Yeah. So. What about you, Greg? Did you get the impression that this was a dominating performance? Because over the radio, didn't come across that way.
No, I wouldn't say that it was dominant. Matter of fact, I made a comment to somebody. One of my friends I was texting with during the game, and I said, this reminds me, this is when the Lions were up, I think 13-3 in the third quarter. I said, this reminds me of an NBA game where the road team just kind of hangs around and tries to catch, tries to steal it at the end. Because that's what the Lions, to me, that's what the Lions were. It's almost like the Lions were, I know they weren't trying to do this, but it looked like they were trying to win the game 13-3.
Yeah.
And I said, it's not going to work. I said, sooner or later, it turns out that the Falcons never did get going. But I said, it just can't. I know. So no, the short answer is no. I didn't think it was dominant. I think the fourth quarter, the Lions sealed it. Yes.
Yeah.
But for the majority of that game, it felt like they just were letting the Falcons hang around. And in the NFL, like in the NBA, when you do that, that can really come back and torch you. So no, I wouldn't have called it dominant at all. The Falcons missed a field goal. This Koo, whatever his name is, he's usually pretty reliable. Yeah. Missed he hooked like a 45 or 46 yard or whatever it was. And, that would have drawn them closer. The Lions were not able to convert a lot of third downs. They went through a stretch there, similar to a baseball game where you go down 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3 even the middle innings. The Lions were going, out. They couldn't get a first down. They couldn't convert a third down conversion. The Falcons, it was one of those winning ugly kind of games. And I wouldn't call it dominant by any stretch. The Falcons, like I say, if you stop their run game, you're going to beat them, because this Ritter, their passing game, at least what I saw, was highly unimpressive.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I agree with Greg on this one. the Lions played well enough to win, and I kind of said it before, like Atlanta's offense was terrible. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like self-inflicted, really, and some of Atlanta's mistakes. So
yeah, and I guess it's worth noting that against the worst quarterback they played so far, they sacked them 7 times, and when they couldn't get to the more mobile Patrick Mahomes and Geno Smith. So, but because that was a huge difference in the game right there. Just the fact that Ritter, because the pocket kept collapsing, he couldn't get out of there. Unlike Geno, the more experienced Smith and Mahomes. So that was a very encouraging thing. But let's see if they can do it again against Jordan Love. And we'll see if he's the real deal as well after sitting for like a decade, it feels like, in Green Bay, but behind Aaron Rodgers, who's I'm sure sniffing incense right now trying to cure his Achilles. So anyway, with that, before we get to, I guess we'll talk a little Tigers because they made some news this week. Greg, question 2 of the birthday game.
Absolutely. This is for this is the one for the BlackBerry right here. So this is this is the money question right here. This person was born on this date in 1964. He was a player. He played predominantly in the National League. Many years he played, from 86 to 2001, but then became a bench coach for the Rays and eventually the Cubs, and is currently a manager in the National League East.
Manager? Oh, shoot. Nick, go ahead.
I'm drawing a blank. The only one I'm thinking of is Buck Showalter, but he's old as hell. So, I mean, he's not born in 64. He's a lot older than that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing a blank on the other managers.
Well, he played for the Cubs, the Expos, the Reds, the Giants, the White Sox, and the Rays, the Rangers, the Blue Jays, and the Braves. But he is made his name sitting on the bench under Joe Madden, and many years in Tampa. And he was actually a guy out that I wanted the Tigers to hire before they hired Ron Gardenhire.
I think I know.
Oh, God. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
Is it Gonzalez? Is that Atlanta's manager? Is that right?
Freddie Gonzalez? That's who you're thinking of?
Yeah.
No.
Wait.
Isn't it Snicker? Or Snicker no longer the manager there?
This is your game, Greg.
Snicker was the manager. Snicker.
I don't know. All that comes to mind is Gonzalez. So sorry.
Oh God, I'm just gonna guess Torey Lovello.
No, not Troy Lovello, not Gonzalez.
I know that's probably too young, but
I'm surprised. You guys are gonna kick yourselves when you find out who this is.
Probably. But not like we've been watching a lot of baseball as Tigers fans as of late. So baseball's coming on in the back burner. That's why I'm kind of looking forward to the playoffs. So I'll start paying attention to baseball again. But the Tigers, actually, we'll get back to question 3 of the birthday game when Greg will probably give us the gimme. Hopefully it's a gimme, but the way things are going, we still might be guessing at it.
I don't know if it is.
Yeah, exactly. So, but breaking news, guys, the Tigers missed the postseason. They were eliminated this week. It was the 9th straight season. The Twins clinched the division on Friday. They were the only playoff team out of a very weak Central. The Tigers could finish second, could finish third. They're in a dogfight with the Guardians. When the Tigers lost to the Athletics Friday night, and ensured that the Tigers would finish under 500 for the 7th consecutive season. And obviously, this is the 9th straight season they're going to miss the playoffs, now tied with the Angels for the longest playoff drought in baseball. The last time either team qualified was 2014. And obviously, the last time the Tigers even had a playoff contending team was 2016, when they were eliminated on the last day of the regular season. So, I don't know what more to say about that, other than about the only thing people really have been talking about with these Tigers, Greg, is the end of Miguel Cabrera's career, because they've been playing like 500 baseball for a couple of months now, but it's been nothing exciting to write home about it. I really haven't seen much from this team, Greg, that has got me excited over them playing 500 ball for a couple of months.
They actually are kind of probably end up winning more games than I thought they might win. I pegged them, I think, in the upper 60s, low 70s. They've got 73 right now.
Yeah.
They'll probably win 75, 76, 77 in that range, which, is better than I thought they would, to be frank with you. I looked at the roster and I just didn't see 75 wins necessarily, especially with all their pitchers being hurt and so forth. So I guess that's some sort of a good thing. But I will say this though. Torkelson, obviously a lot of the eggs in the rebuild basket have been put in the Torkelson and Green area.
Right.
But I wrote a piece about Torkelson, I think it was in late June, when people were kind of getting on that, starting to use that B word, bust. And I said, well, hold on now. Let's not go crazy. Well, since then, he really, the second half of the season, really, Torkelson has been really he's been what the Tigers have wanted him to be. Now, he's probably never going to hit for a high batting average. It's probably not going to be his thing, but he's hitting the ball out of the ballpark. He's driving in runs. Although I was shocked to find out that yesterday in Oakland, he got or Sunday in Oakland, he got his first bases loaded RBI.
Wow, I was kind of shocked to hear about that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But he's hitting the ball out of the ballpark at a really good clip. He's driving in runs. He's settling down a little bit now. I think he's kind of gaining more confidence. So he definitely now looks like, a fixture. He'll be a fixture in the Tigers lineup. There is some good stuff. I mean, there's some good young stuff on that the Tigers can work around. There really is. They really are starting to cobble together a group of young kids now that I think you can get a little bit excited about. And we haven't even seen Justin Henry Malloy yet. We haven't seen Colt Keefe yet. There's a lot of folks that we haven't seen yet, but like Jake Rogers, for example, pleasantly surprised with his offense, with his power. Green is good. Of course, he gets hurt a lot, which scares me. But he's a good player. So things are looking up a little bit. The pitchers are getting healthier again. It does look like they've got the makings, especially in that division, of a team that could inch their way over 500 next year if things go right. We'll see what they do in the offseason. But this is no longer, to me, the joke that I thought they were going to be back in maybe April, May, June, when I thought they'd win 65 games or, flirt with losing 100. They're really, again, they want to. Here's the other thing, guys. They finished with a 41-40 road record. Now, I don't know when the last time the Tigers finished with a winning record on the road.
Yeah.
And you could say all you want. Well, that means they suck at the home. Okay, fine. But I'm telling you, it's hard to have a winning record on the road in baseball. It really is. You go 41-40 on the road. That tells me something. Even that year, 2 years ago, when they surprised everybody, won 78, 79 games, they did not have. They were more strong at home. But to win 41 on the road, I know that you want to clean up your home field, but that's not bad. I mean, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, it's I would say this: the Torkelson stuff is encouraging, but it's still not good enough for your everyday first baseman. He's going to probably hit 30 home runs, but he's still only going to have an OPS of under 800, and his OPS plus is literally going to be like league average. And then when you factor in his defense, he's probably a one-WAR player this year. So it's encouraging because he's still only 23. Right. He really needs to step up the get on base part of the game. I mean, I can live with a low batting average. Right. It's the on base percentage that he still struggles with. He's still in the low 300s right now. I mean, there's a lot there that they can still build up on. I mean, the power. I love the power. Yeah. Greg? I can't remember the last time the Tigers had a 30 home run guy. Probably Cabrera, when Cabrera was doing it in his prime.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Other than Cabrera, exactly. Yeah, but. He needs. I agree. He's going to be a fixture, but he still needs to be better. Green is still, like I said, he's hurt again, which is scary. They're all but unrelated injuries, but hopefully the Tigers putting him in left field and just leaving him there will help protect him some rather than running willy-nilly in center field. But like I said, there are some encouraging signs, but there's also this offseason they're going to shed a lot of payroll. We don't know how they're going to spend it, if they bother to spend it. And plus, the free agency class coming up does not look impressive at all, especially for position players. And this team still needs bats. Nick, you care to expound on what Greg and I have been talking about?
Sure. I'll kind of agree with you that some of the signs from the young guys is encouraging, especially after kind of the pitiful year some of them had last year.
Yeah.
But honestly, the way I'm looking at it is beyond the young, a few young guys in these like little bright spots. They're still an under 500 team.
Yep.
They, this year they'll probably get to the win record they had 2 years ago.
When we're all excited.
And when Avila and Illich both declared the rebuild to be over. And, now is the reset of the rebuild over after this season? Like, God help us with that.
Yeah.
And so, honestly, what I've often said is that, I hear people talking about the young guys and development and having a good farm system, and that's all true, but that's a long-term project.
Yeah.
And if you, for lack of better expression, bet the farm on a bunch of young guys getting you anywhere, you're really rolling the dice on this.
Yeah.
They need to have a strong team, some veterans on there, make some trades if they want to be better. Fine. Free agent class isn't that great. And I don't think signing a guy for stupid money is necessarily the solution, which is a lot of the way people reply to me. It's like, okay, figure out how to trade some of your assets for another major leaguer. Don't look in the bowels of some minor league system for a minor league to get a minor leaguer for your major leaguer, or so.
Yeah. Because you look at Nick, you look at this everyday lineup they're throwing out there right now. It's almost all young guys except for Javi Baez, who's essentially turned into Ed Brinkman at the plate. But yeah, when you look at the everyday lineup, there are no veterans. Or unless you consider Nick Beaton or Matt Vierling a veteran. You're right. This team needs a veteran bat that they can put in the middle of the order. And as you said, those guys are really going to get hard to find. You aren't going to find them in free agency, at least not this year.
And, before, free agency was even a thing 50 years ago, you had this thing called trading. And I've heard arguments like, well, what are they going to trade? It's like, it depends on what the other team is willing to give up.
Yeah.
Maybe you will find something. And it doesn't have to be a guy in A ball.
Yeah.
Right. And, because who the hell knows if a guy in A ball is going to ever get to the majors anyway.
Right.
Good luck with that.
Well, let me ask you this, Greg. One of the names I have seen thrown out there by some of the beat writers or pundits out there is that the most valuable tradable commodity the Tigers have is Tariq Skubal, a young left-handed starting pitcher who has really yet to put together a full season healthy. But when he's been healthy, he's been essentially the team's ace. What do you think about trading some of this pitching to get what they need offensively?
I wanted them to trade Skubal a couple years ago, frankly. Yeah. I'm all for it. This day and age, we were talking in our football discussion about devalued positions, like running back isn't what it used to be, and so forth. So I've been saying this for a while. Starting pitching is to me, isn't what it used to be either. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, you get 5 innings out of these guys, and you're happy if you do. Turn the game over to the bullpen. Now, on occasion, you have the Verlanders of the world and the guys like they'll go 7 innings, here and there.
They're unicorns anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, right, exactly. Those kind of guys are not the norm. You get 5 innings out of a kid. You get 150, 175 innings out of a starting pitcher nowadays. You're happy. So, the game is all about the bullpen now. It's all about the 6th inning on, and the 6th inning on, the starter is hardly ever in there. And if teams still think, but having said all that, I mean, Skubal is left-handed. That helps for sure. And he's still young and what have you. That's fine. I don't know though, Al and Nick. I don't know anymore how much you can get back for a kid like that. I mean, if you're looking for bats, which I know we all think the Tigers could still use, I'm not sure that just Scooble's going to do it. You're probably going to have to package somebody else. I don't think you can just trade Scooble for a bat and call it a day. I think you're going to have to do something more creative than that. Now, he can be part of a package for sure. That you can put together, because I would imagine he does have some sort of value. But again, these pitchers they're so mercurial, and they're so, it seems like anymore they're so fragile.
Yeah,
I can't depend on these guys. Scooble's already been. All these guys have Tommy John. It seems it's almost like a rite of passage. You're not a big league pitcher until you've had Tommy John surgery.
Yeah,
and I don't know if I'm a GM of another team. If I'm in a game that's designed to be built around offense, if I'm gonna, plunk down on the table a big bat just for Scooble, I think you got to package him with something else. You have to package him with like a Justin Henry Malloy or somebody like that, or Colt Keefe, to get a really established big league bat. That's my opinion. But to just say that we're going to dangle Scooble and bring back all these riches, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's in today's game. Yeah, I find myself agreeing with you when it comes to that. It's the way. Yeah, I think you nailed it. Much like in the NFL, the running back has become devalued in many ways. Starting pitchers have become that in Major League Baseball. The advent of openers, and you said, and late inning specialists, and every guy in the bullpen can throw 100 miles an hour anymore. I mean, it's crazy. So, yeah, will Scooble get us up? And but if you really want to make a splash, I agree. You have to throw in one of the top prospects, or I don't think they really and the guys that big league teams would want on the big league, on the Tigers big league roster, you don't want to trade, like a Riley Green. So I think you're onto something there. If they're going to make a splash deal, it's got to be a multiple player package, and at least, and he said, and it has to start probably with Scooble. Nick, are you on the pitching train? Because and that's the other thing with these guys we're talking, like, who knows how Casey Mize didn't impress me all that much even before he got hurt. And now he's going to come back from missing a year and a half after Tommy John. No guarantees what he's going to be pitching like, because everybody thought, Spencer Turnbull's coming back. And he ended the season, throwing meatballs down in Toledo. I know I saw his stat line the other day. He's not throwing very well after recovering from Tommy John. So, where do you fall on all this, Nick? Are you ready to make a blockbuster deal with the pitching?
I will take any trade if it makes my team better. And I don't care. It's trade Torkelson if who you get in return makes you a better team. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm kind of married to them, and that's kind of the way I look at it. Scooble, unfortunately, when they drafted him, he was injured.
Yeah.
Because in college, he was actually, I didn't know of him before then, but he went to Seattle University. That's where he was pitching in college. But I think he was somewhere else before he went to Seattle University, because I think he was hurt. He's chronic. He's chronically injured.
Yeah, that's how they got him in the 9th round. Because
that's
of that
right.
Injury. Yeah.
I mean, you see when he's on, he's damn good pitcher.
Right.
But he can't stay healthy. So I don't think they would get much for him at all. They would have to kind of like throw him in with a more complex trade, basically. Yeah. Right. Not a 1-for-1. Hell, looking at the Tigers front office, they took their all-star major league pitcher and got themselves an A-ball player in return. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, Scott Harris is yet to prove that he can make the type of trade that you guys are talking about, which brings us to that the president of baseball operations, Scott Harris, finally hired himself a general manager. This kind of, I was like scratching my head at first when it was announced that the Tigers had hired as their 20th general manager Jeff Greenberg away from the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm like, what? But it turned out that Greenberg, he's 37 years old. He spent more than a decade in the front office of the Chicago Cubs, where he obviously worked with Scott Harris during their World Series contending years. but he left the Cubs to become an assistant GM with the Chicago Blackhawks about a year ago, where, this is the quote, he oversaw strategic systems and processes within the hockey operations department. You could just shorten that to he led analytics. He led the analytics department with the Blackhawks, or at least in charge of rebuilding it. But prior to the Cubs, Greenberg had spent all his time in base. I mean, prior to the Cubs, his days in Chicago, I should say, he also worked in the front office of the Pirates and the Diamondbacks. Obviously, this is a case of Scott Harris wanting to hire someone he was familiar with, which is what we usually see in these baseball hires or any pro sport front office hire. People tend to hire who they have worked with before and who they like and know that they have the same philosophies. I'm guessing that's what we're getting here with Scott Harris and Jeff Greenberg, as Greenberg becoming his right-hand man, essentially taking on the role that Harris had in San Francisco, where he was what's the PBO there, Farhad Zaharia or something like that in San Francisco. Yeah, so he's doing the job Scott Harris did in San Francisco. He's going to do it here in Detroit. So, I got to say, Nick, when I first heard his hire, I'm like, they're Blackhawks. What the hell?
That's kind of the reaction I had. It's like, are the same old Lions are they becoming the same old Tigers now?
Yes. like a Matt Millen hire or something like that. Yeah, hire him right out of the booth.
Oh, it wasn't, it turns out it wasn't that stupid of a hire.
Exactly, exactly.
So the guy has an analytics background.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. And honestly, okay, as a scientist, I deal with data for the last 30 some years.
Yeah.
And you can collect data, you can plot data, you can put it on a spreadsheet. It's knowing what to do with the data and knowing the limitations of the data. Mm-hmm. And if you're only going just by the data, I mean, isn't that what Billy Bean did and to limited effect in Oakland?
Mm-hmm.
But he also had an edge because nobody else had analytics.
Right.
Not true anymore. Everybody caught up. Well, almost everybody caught up. But you still need to, the things that the Tigers are missing is the ability to make a savvy trade. I think we talked about it before. Mm-hmm. Harris so far has shown that he stinks at it. Is this guy any better? I have no idea. So if Harris, hired a guy that's like him, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah. Yeah. And Greg, it's worth noting that we talked about this before the show, that this kind of went under the radar because it didn't make you would have think, the Tigers introducing their general manager would be headlines in the newspapers. Yet it seems to have barely made a blip so far.
Yeah, it was odd. Right before the show, and I haven't checked it lately, but right before the show, I checked the free.com website. There was a sports section. There was nothing about Greenberg whatsoever.
Because he was introduced today, which is why I clicked. Yeah,
right. I clicked on the Tigers tab where you get all the Tigers stuff. Nothing there. Detroit News did have, for the subscribers only, they did have a piece on Greenberg. Now, whether I haven't checked it lately, but it was odd. It was very, like you said, under the radar, very muted. They may as well have just waited till the end of the season if they were going to do this. And I know that a lot of the talk right now is about Miggy Cabrera's last week, and that sucks up. It takes a lot of oxygen. I get it. Maybe even more so to just wait until after the season's over, then bring in Greenberg to meet the press. But it was odd. But Nick said something that kind of resonated with me about, if he's the same kind of a guy as Scott Harris, they're trying to make this out to be a partnership, which is fine. Okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's a partnership, and there's two peas in a pod, and that's what gets me a little bit scared. Now, this is nothing against. This Greenberg guy might be the best thing since sliced bread, but all I'm saying is that I see when I'm back when we were together, I think in July or August, and I said that Scott Harris needs help. I said he needs a more grizzled veteran guy in there to kind of that's been through the wars, and clearly Greenberg's not that necessarily.
Right.
I don't see this Greenberg guy as being that riffing off of that compliment to Harris. I see him as another Harris, so I see two Harrises in the front office. Now that may be okay. Maybe it's going to end up being all right. Maybe that's what the Tigers need. I was hoping that they would go though the route of a more veteran guy, because with the theme of the show has been about devaluing. GMs in baseball have been devalued. It used to be the GM was the guy chomping on the cigar, making all the trades. He was never younger than 60 years old, and he was the one making all the trades. Now
they all
GM
look like Jim Campbell.
Right hand man guy.
Yeah.
So that's changed. Now you bring in a third. It's like two college kids running the team right now. But that's just, we'll see. Maybe that's what the Tigers need. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's but yeah, the weird thing is, right. There, you would think there had been some live coverage or video or something. It really just felt like it all went under the radar for the most part. You make a good point. They probably would have made a bigger splash if you just waited till next week, and made the announcement when there's, when the season's over. Because as you said, it's all about Cabrera right now, which we probably should touch on a little bit. In that Miguel Cabrera's last 6 games are this week. The end is nigh for Miggy in that 21 seasons in Major League Baseball, 16 as a Tiger. At 40 years old, he started his final homestand. They play 3 against the Royals, 3 against the Guardians. Cabrera is only going to miss 1 game this week. He's not going to play Thursday afternoon, as he never plays a day game after a night game anyway. And Saturday will be the big send-off, where they'll have all his friends and teammates and family in. And then Sunday's game, it's a full sellout. I'm just, I guess the only thing is we don't know is if he's going to play the field at all, specifically on Sunday. So, I don't know about you, Nick, but I kind of, we talked about this a few podcasts ago where, I've kind of softened on how I was kind of anti-Cabrera for the past couple of years, but I've kind of softened this year, seeing the end of his career, seeing him finally playing out the string here. And, I'm thrilled for him and the career he's had, and it's being celebrated. But I don't know about you, but I'm also kind of glad it's over. More than anything else, it's just over. And now he hasn't been an anchor on the payroll because they've had such a low payroll anyway. But it now feels like now that Miguel Cabrera is going to, I'm not sure what he's going to do with the rest of his life. He's going to stay in baseball or what. Now he's no longer going to be on the Tigers roster. It really feels like it's going to give them a hell of a lot more flexibility. And not just payroll, but just position-wise, where they can now rotate guys through the DH position.
I kind of feel the same way you do.
Yeah.
It's like I loved having Cabrera in his prime on the Detroit Tigers and watching him become MVP, chase the Triple Crown, and win a lot of other titles in the meantime as well. It was fantastic. We don't get to see that often in someone like that caliber in a Tigers uniform.
Yeah.
I don't think in my lifetime I've seen that one. K-Line was before my time, so I've never got to see him. And I'm struggling to think who else would have been that caliber.
Right.
I mean, Trammell and Whitaker were good, but I think Cabrera was way better.
Yeah.
So, but I think, I'll be glad it's over.
Yeah.
Because that's not the, last couple of years have not been the Cabrera I remember. You mentioned already the salary thing on the payroll, but, it's a roster spot too.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's very much a roster spot. And even if he does get on base, you put someone in there because you don't want him running around the bases.
Right.
Yeah.
And getting hurt, so you have to really manage around him, basically.
Yeah, and to AJ Hinch's credit, he has done a very good job of it because he's kept him healthy all year. I mean, for the first time in like 5 years.
Yeah, not a small thing, right?
Yeah, and Greg, what's your thoughts on all this?
No, Al makes a great point. That doesn't get talked about nearly enough. I mean, Hinch's, and I remember writing about this a couple years ago. Like how will Hinch handle this whole Miggy thing? And I think he's done a great job at keeping Miggy, using him properly, keeping him happy. Not that Miggy was ever the type of guy that would pop off about his manager or anything like that, but you just get the impression that there's a comfort level between Hinch and Miggy, and there's not been any sort of hint that Miggy has shown has been resentful of in any way, shape, or form of the way he's been used. And it's been it's been tough. It's tough for a manager to navigate around that. You've got, a Hall of Fame guy, first ballot Hall of Famer, who is not, to Nick's point, not nearly the player that he used to be. And now you've got essentially you can't bench him. He's not, you can't pretend like he's the 25th guy. He's not Don Kelly. He's got to play. So you got to figure out how to play him. He's got to play 3-4 times a week, get him those at bats. And frankly, Miggy was hardly the worst hitter on that team this year. Hardly.
Yeah.
I mean, he was hardly the worst player. So, but still, I mean, that's tough. I'm glad you said that, Al, because that's not too many people are making a big enough deal about how Hinch has handled this whole situation. Now, the other thing that I wrote about a month or so ago was what will become of Miggy next year? Will he be part of the organization? Will the Tigers bring him to spring training? Will he be an ambassador? What will they do with him? And this is a guy that, still doesn't speak very great he's not a great English speaker. Right. He's never in Detroit other than during the baseball season. I don't know what they're going to do with him. You just let him walk away. I mean, this is like Nick said, he's the greatest hitter the Tigers have had in my lifetime. And I did see Kaline, and even Kaline will tell you that he's better than he was. And I don't know what they do with this guy. They just let him walk away and thanks for the memories, or they got to try to bring him in. But I don't know I don't know that he wants to be brought in. He may just want to be content to go to Venezuela and do his own thing. I don't know.
Honestly, that might be the best spot for him if you want to keep him in the organization, is being a Latin American ambassador. Have him work out of Venezuela, because the man is literally a god down there. Yes,
he is. He is.
So just you have him as the point guy for Detroit, or just as a as the greeter for the organization in Latin America. And that would, if I was the Tigers, that's what I would want, to keep him in the fold. That's how I would want to use him, because they're right. Because I know we've all seen this, where great players normally tend to be average at best, or maybe worse coaches, because the things they do were often just because they were extraordinarily talented, and it doesn't come across to your typical league average kind of player. Nick?
That's right. Yeah, I guess I was thinking about him, like, can he have some influence in Venezuela? It's like I always wondered why the Tigers didn't get more out of having so many damn good Venezuelan players.
Yes.
I mean, he wasn't the only. I mean, he was the top of the heap, but they had, Guillen, Carlos Guillen. There was Magli Ordonez. There was one or two others as well. I can't think of right now, but they had a hell of a team with very talented Venezuelan players, and I don't know what they're kind of, are they tapping into those guys and to kind of make a connection with more Venezuelan players? I mean, that would be a great thing. And I don't know if it's just my impression, but the Tigers have a couple of, fan favorites that they keep around, to be part of the organization. Al Kaline is an obvious example.
Willie Horton, I think.
Willie Horton's another one.
Yeah.
But it feels like it maybe Alan Trammell a little bit, but it falls off a cliff after that. It's like, why don't they kind of really bring in their star players that have contributed? Like the Yankees, I think, always recognize their former players, their former stars. It's kind of like an honor, but they also, it's kind of a, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship between the player and organization. At least that's my impression.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Greg, but if I was the Tigers, I think I would want to keep Cabrera in baseball, because he's always given the impression to me, especially considering the loose cannon that's kind of been his personal life, that he may start to revert back to his bad habits if he doesn't have the discipline of baseball.
That's something that, again, nobody's talking about and maybe may not talk about. But yeah, I've thought about that too. Frankly, I have thought about that. You know, when you take something away from a guy like when you don't really take it away because he's retiring, but
that's all he knows.
That's
all he knows.
You're right. When that something is missing, and maybe we're not giving him enough credit. You know, maybe we're making too big of a deal about that other stuff. But I mean, you know, he's a 40-year-old guy, and you know, he's. I don't. It's a good question because I thought about it myself. Is like, you know, what happens? That's why I say it's not just about what do the Tigers do with him, but what does he do? You know, what does he do?
Or what does he want to do? Right.
Right. What does he want to do? It doesn't strike me though, guys. He does not strike me as a guy that really wants to have anything to do with the team when I'm not saying that to say that he doesn't appreciate the time he played in Detroit. Right. It doesn't strike me though as a guy that would want to have anything to do with the Tigers beyond maybe that casino greeter thing you were talking about in Latin America. I don't know that he wants to do anything more than that. It just doesn't strike me. I don't, you know, I would be surprised.
It's possible his loyalty was to. Yeah, it's possible his loyalty was to Mike Ilitch more than anything else.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Mike is the one who gave him the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
You know, so that, you know, and who knows? Because we have no idea what Chris Ilitch is thinking at this point. But yeah, it's interesting to see what's going to happen with Miguel Cabrera this coming off season. All right, with that, I think it's time before we get to the Wings and maybe start wrapping this show up. Greg, I'm ready for the gimme. One of us needs. Oh, we're not going to get the BlackBerry. We're going to get the booby prize, whatever that might be. But question 3 of the birthday game.
Well, again, this player, he was a player. He's a manager now. He manages the Washington Nationals. He was born in 1964. He was a longtime bench coach for Joe Madden for both the Cubs and the Rays, I think.
Yeah.
And he, again, I wanted the Tigers to hire him, but the Nationals hired him before the Tigers did, and he led them to the 2019 World Series in his second year.
I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember their manager's name. I can. How about you, Nick?
Same.
I can't.
Same.
I can't. All right. Who is it, Greg?
Dave Martinez.
Oh, yeah.
Dave.
Yes.
Dave Martinez.
Well, so Nick was kind of headed in the right direction with that Freddie Gonzalez guess. So
right. I remember, like, I didn't remember who it was, but yeah, I remember. I think Dave Martinez was being considered before Hinch or during the time of Hinch.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that right, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was.
But Greg, you stumped us. That doesn't happen too often.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I was going to go Serena Williams, but that would have been, I think, too easy.
Yeah.
She's 41.
Maybe we'll get a softball on the next show a month from now. So, all right, or just save that BlackBerry for another time, or it probably wouldn't take my SIM anyway. But anyway, with that, the Red Wings, guys. Tonight is their exhibition season opener. I mean, we're that close to hockey season. As Greg mentioned at the start of the show, we'll talk a lot more about the NHL when we have Keith Gave on in a month. But as I bring up the score, it is now 3-3 in the second period against the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. But this kind of brings up, and we've kind of touched on this on and off over the past few months anyway, and whenever the Wings come up. But this past week in The Athletic, there was an opinion article asking if we have reached make it or break it time for the Yzerplan. Essentially, that Yzerman was hired as Wings GM on April 19th, 2019. 4 years later, we're going into season 5 of Steve Yzerman, and the Wings are considered, at best, a playoff bubble team due to the lack of elite talent, which we have really hammered home. There are no elite players on this team. The closest they have to it is probably Mo Sider, and Dylan Larkin is like he's very good, but I would not call him an elite star type player. He's on a cup winning team. He's probably your second line center, not your first line center. But they've also we have to factor that in, that they've had some awful draft lottery luck where they've consistently dropped in the damn lottery instead of even staying in place. I mean, that has really, I think, put a damper on the rebuild. Some at least slowed it down. But when it comes to saying it's make or break it, it's probably like he's jumping the gun. But because Ken Holland, we've talked about Ken Holland in the past. He left Yzerplan no elite talent, a shit show of roster issues that were exacerbated by those god awful long-term no trade clause filled contracts that we constantly railed against, and obviously drafting was mediocre at best. When the best player I think Holland may have drafted in the last part of his tenure was Michael Rasmussen, who was like a fourth line center. It says volumes. But I'll start with you, Greg. Is it fair to ask just how much longer it's going to take to build a title contender in Detroit as we're entering season 5 of the Yzerplan?
No, of course it's not unfair to ask that question. I mean, it's absolutely a fair game. But the thing that makes Yzerman, though, so frustrating to so many fans, and I think to a degree the media, is that he won't cave. He won't ever give you that's a GM who is probably very comfortable in his own skin. There are a lot of other guys around the National Hockey League who would indeed say, put some sort of stake in the ground and say, okay, by this date, we're going to be whatever. But Yzerman, he knows he's got pretty much all the time in the world in Detroit.
Yeah.
They're not going to fire him. There's no way. So he's going to, he doesn't have to give anybody any sort of, and to be honest with you though, but the thing about that is that it's refreshingly honest at the same time. I know fans want to hear this is the year. We were making fun earlier what Nick was saying about Al Avila and Chris Illich declaring the rebuild over. We saw how that went over. Yeah. So that's what I mean about Yzerman. You're not going to get him to do any of that. You're just not. And so, he's going to tell you, well, we're getting closer. I'd like to make the playoffs. But the thing about him, though, and he's right, is that he wants what he wants isn't just a cameo appearance in the first round, and then you don't see the playoffs again for 3 or 4 more years. He wants the Red Wings, because he knows this. He comes from it's in his blood. When he played for the Red Wings, they always made the playoffs every year. I mean, almost every year, except the first couple. Always in the playoffs. And in fact, now that I think about it, I think he only missed the playoffs like once as a player. Once. He played for like 20-some odd years. So he knows what that's all about, to be consistently in the playoffs. And that's what he wants to build as a GM. He doesn't want these, let's make the playoffs 1 year, get blasted out in 4 games, and then we don't make the playoffs game for 2 or 3 years. That's not what he wants to do. And the fans, I know, are playoff starved. I get it. But to your question, no, it's not unfair to ask, certainly, because 5 years is 5 years. But I think you kind of answered your own question when you said that he wasn't left a whole lot by Kenny Holland in terms of talent. He had some bad contracts. It just wasn't a good situation. And so I mean it does take a while. And Nick was talking earlier about guys in A-ball in baseball. Yeah. When will they ever see that? Well, same thing in hockey. You draft a kid, 18, 19 years old. We don't know when he's going to ever play. For every Austin Matthews there is, and Connor Bedard, there's a million other kids who you draft at age 19. You never see the NHL, or if they do, they're scrubs. So this Danielson kid that they drafted, I guess he scored tonight. Okay, that's fine. But we don't know anything about this kid. We don't know how good he's going to be. I think what he has done, though, he has in increments, Yzerman has improved the roster, and he has, in more than little increments, improved the future of the team. And I think that if you look at the big picture and and really take off your blinders and look at what he's done for the future of if he were to resign tomorrow, for example, if he were to just say, I'm walking away, the next GM would be let's put it this way, would be in much better shape now than Yzerman was when he took the team over in 19.
Right. Yeah. Nick, is it time to question the Yzerplan, or are you in is it unfair to ask why it hasn't gone better or faster, or why this team isn't a playoff team yet?
I mean, I think it's always fair game to ask, why isn't it faster? Why is it going so slow? Why is he making any given decision or trade or whatever it might be? Yeah. It's fair to ask that. and let's face it, our Detroit teams haven't been so good lately, so we have nothing else to do.
Right.
So, but and in the Red Wings in particular, we're so damn good for so long. We're spoiled with those guys. But
let me ask you this though.
Okay.
Do you, especially you guys are really active on sports Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I find that Red Wings fans seem to be weirdly overly defensive when even Yzerman is remotely criticized about any of his moves. I mean, they come out, they're ready to throw hands if you go any kind of criticism of Steve Yzerman. I mean, I get that, yeah, he's a favorite son and won all those Stanley Cups, and he has a track record.
Right.
But someone says, boy, I'm questioning those free agency signings. And they come out like it was a personal insult. I don't know if you find it like that.
So I'll raise my hand slightly on that one because if there's any GM in Detroit that I trusted lately, it's been Yzerman for sure, and Brad Holmes is starting to grow on me too.
Yeah.
And I know they're not in the playoffs; they're not ready to win a Stanley Cup. But and then Yzerman doesn't tell you everything, but he is, like Greg said, was brutally honest about stuff.
Yeah.
He is when you do ask him a question. He's very direct, honest, and he doesn't waver from his plan. But what is he doing that's where you kind of say, I trust him? Part of it is his track record, and it is Steve Yzerman, so you do give him a little bit bonus points for that. But, at some point you're going to start questioning because you're tired of seeing early exits in the season. But what is he doing, though? He's building long-term with drafting well, but he's doing something else. He's trading for NHL players, too.
Yeah.
Or signing guys that, they can actually play, that are, free agents. They're not going to be your Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid. He's not going to sign those guys. Those guys will never hit the market. Or very, very unlikely. But he's signing good players to the team. And he's trying to get better.
Yeah.
So
Greg, you were like ready to throw hands yourself there for a second when I brought up how weirdly defensive fans can be.
No, I agree with you. No, they are weirdly defensive. I don't know if you consider it weirdly defensive, but they are defensive.
I'll put it this way. I just saw a thread on Reddit today, for example, where the essentially, people, the people are talking about the make it or break it article, and fans are like, well, what do you expect him to do without high draft picks? Well, he's the GM. It's his job to figure that out.
Well,
I think that's what gets me.
Okay, here's what I would say about that. We for many years, because we've been doing this show for that long, we have made fun of the fans for being impatient, for being unreasonable, and for being, obnoxious. Okay. Well, now here we come finally with the take from the fans. Now you might call it weirdly defensive. Yeah. But maybe they're actually showing some actual restraint and some reason. They're being reasonable. Now you could say that maybe it's because it's Yzerman. Yeah, that's
why. That's the thing. None of the other GMs of this town would get anywhere near that. But
it's funny that we make fun of them when they go the other way, going too impatient. Then we make fun of them for being defensive of. Now I will say though that Yzerman is. I think one of the reasons why he gets that kind of isn't just because he played here, is because his mark is, there's two things. Number one, his mark is still on that Tampa Bay team.
Right.
It is. Yeah. Secondly, the people around the NHL, specifically players. How many times have you read a player the Red Wings have signed who has said, the reason I came here is because I believe in what Steve Yzerman is building. Yeah. I don't know how many times I've read that. Okay. I mean,
the latest being DeBrincat. Yeah.
Everybody has said that. Everyone that signs for the Red Wings says the same thing. And so that tells me something. Okay. Now maybe he's not getting, there's only so many great players that are ever available at any given time anyway. But the guys that he signs, whether it's a David Perron, whether it's a DeBrincat he traded for, whether it's a whoever, you name it, they always say the same thing. I'm encouraged by what's being built here in Detroit, and when Steve Yzerman calls, you listen.
Yeah.
Well, that tells me something. That tells me that it's not just blind loyalty by Detroit Red Wings fans. It tells me that there's something else going on around the league. Yzerman, by the way, has hoodwinked a number of GMs. Yeah. He did it in Tampa. He got two first-round draft picks for Martin St. Louis when St. Louis was a million years old. He hoodwinks GMs a lot. Now he doesn't always win. He didn't win the Nedeljkovic thing. That was a stinker. But even the DeBrincat trade, I thought was a steal. And then he promptly signed him for a very reasonable extension. Very reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say Yzerman has not done a great job. He's done a good job. But where he's been, I think, great is that he cleaned up the contract mess. That they are no longer handcuffed by long-term, untradeable, no trade clause filled deals. You know, you could argue about his free agency picks, and you can also say that we have to wait on the prospect pipeline he's building in the minor leagues. But I'm not going to deny the fact that he has cleaned up the Red Wings roster. We're to the point where they have no problem making any move they decide to make because they have movable contracts and are well under the salary cap and all that. Right. But also you could also argue, why did they have a bunch of third line guys signed under multiple year deals, things like that. But again, overall I think he's done good. I don't think he's been great. Nick, would you agree with that, or remember I underrating Yzerman?
Honestly, like I said, I'm kind of like still defending Yzerman in this one. And especially when I look at the other Detroit GMs, I think he's done an excellent. Why does he pick third line guys? Well, the other option is to pick rookies.
Yeah.
That's what he's got to choose from, which is going to be worse for you. God knows what you're going to get out of, guys that have, just cracking the lineup.
Right.
The other part I like is, no matter whether you think the Red Wings are in a rebuild, the message is clear to the team. You are going to compete. I feel too often when you label a team a rebuild, that all of a sudden you kind of absolve them from having to go out and compete.
Like the Tigers for like 5 years. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, I don't give a shit if you're a rebuilding team. God damn it. Go try and win a baseball game,
Right.
And so that message has always been clear to his team. And now he, I think in a press conference from last week, he said, by bringing in, NHL ready players and signing these guys, he can give his young guys time to develop.
Yeah.
They don't have to be thrown into the wolves and try and act like a veteran NHLer. So, which is,
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, that's why the Tigers are suffering. They put out a bunch of rookies and second-year guys, and you get what you get.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Greg, when you talk about the honesty, I think probably one of the most favorite things I've heard any Detroit GM say was when Yzerman was asked why he sold at the trade deadline and got rid of Bertuzzi and all. He said, "I didn't think we were going to make the playoffs." Bluntly put it that way. And I mean, and that's refreshing when he just admitted we weren't good enough, so why keep the band together? It made perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that that a lot of fans don't want to hear, but it's also, I think what they do, I think that they kind of, after it settles in a little bit, they realize, he's right. He's right. I don't want to hear it, but it's an inconvenient truth, but it is the truth. So yeah.
All right. With that, I think it's time to start hitting the home stretch, guys. We've done all our bits. We got one bit left to go, and that is our jerk of the week. I should say now we've done all our bits. So, Nick, you're the new guy, so you get to go first. Who's your jerk of the week?
I feel like this is almost an easy one, but Mike Babcock.
Good call. Yeah.
And kind of the whole stupid. it's not just this particular situation. And when it first came out, I thought, like, wait a minute, is this like a first time he's doing it? Why is this not a slap on a wrist? Why is he all of a sudden resigning? But turns out this is not the first time he's done something like this. And I think he was doing this even in Toronto, where he was taking up players' phones and said, show me your phone so I could look through your thing. And I'm surprised the players didn't just tell him to F off. And of course you can't, but it's sounding like he's really manipulative, and you just, I don't know, you don't put perfume on a pig. I mean, like, so he's my jerk of the week, because that's just not the way to treat anybody in any situation. That's manipulative, and you're just playing mind games.
Yeah, who expects a leopard to change his spots? Mike Babcock is going to do Mike Babcock things, and that I could not believe it. Thank God that they didn't let that slide. So I would say really good call. Greg, who is your jerk of the week?
Yeah, that was a good call, and I don't think that we will ever see Mike Babcock behind an. That's it. He's done.
Right.
I can't imagine.
There would be a mutiny with players if they somehow.
I can't imagine. And then now, of course, a lot of players have come out of the woodwork. It's just where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
My jerk of the week. This is a little bit under the radar, but it's disgusting. In Ohio, this is in Ohio. A high school football coach resigned Monday after his team used racist and anti-Semitic language to call out plays during a game last week. Now, this guy, Tim McFarland, coached a high school called Brooklyn High School in Brooklyn, Ohio. They played a team from Beechwood High School, and Beechwood apparently is a Cleveland suburb that is roughly 90% Jewish, according to the latest survey published in 2011. What McFarland and the Brooklyn team did was, as they called out plays, they used the word Nazi in the play call. They did it repeatedly, and the Brooklyn team, the Beechwood team, threatened to take their players off the field, and so only then did the Brooklyn team stop that in the second half. But apparently, even after they stopped yelling out Nazi, they used several racial slurs at the Beechwood kids during the game. This McFarland guy handed in his resignation Monday, and the Brooklyn school superintendent, of course, accepted the resignation, apologized left and right, blah, blah, blah. And I just, in this day and age, I just can't wrap my head around that. I don't know what this guy was thinking. I don't know, you can say shame on the players. Yes, of course. But clearly the coach is driving this, and why in the world you would have your players yell Nazi. And I don't care who you're playing. I don't care if you're playing who you're playing, but especially against a team that's 90% Jewish is just, it's beyond the pale. And these are high school we're talking 16, 17, 18-year-old kids that are shouting these things. Can you imagine being a 16, 17-year-old linebacker and hearing the quarterbacks call it Nazi and you're Jewish?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get it. So clearly this Tim McFarland guy's got a screw loose, and I'm glad that he should be nowhere near coaching anyone ever again.
So we're kids that's for damn sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's leader of men. That's what the head coach is supposed to be. Good Lord, I didn't hear the story. That's awful.
I didn't hear that one either. That's like that's a head scratcher. Why anybody would even think that was a good idea?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Right. All right. My jerk of the week. I was originally going to go with the Oakland A's because their party gift to Miguel Cabrera was a $90 bottle of wine to a man who is admitted alcoholic and doesn't drink. God. Let alone a bottle of wine they probably picked up at the liquor store next door to the damn ballpark.
Right.
But I'm going to go a little different area, though, because that was too low-hanging fruit. I'm going to go with Ryan Day, Ohio State's head football coach, who apparently is in a war of words with an 86-year-old Lou Holtz. And, well, this all started when before the big Ohio State-Notre Dame game this past Saturday. And old Holtz, being the former head coach of the Fighting Irish that he is, and he was kind of honest when he said, Ohio State has a reputation for being soft. I mean, just ask the University of Michigan do that. Just ask Jim Harbaugh, you know. So when Ohio State pulled out a very close win on the last play of the game, and Ryan Day decided to be all tough guy about Lou Holtz. This after the game, this is the quote. I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. What he said about our team and what he said about our team. I cannot believe this is a tough team. We're proud to be from Ohio. It's always been Ohio against the world. Ohio against the world? It'll continue to be Ohio against the world, but I'll tell you what, I love those kids. We got a tough team, which was hilarious. Lou Holtz is 86 years old. And he's a what do you expect him to say when it comes to the Fighting Irish? Well, what's even funnier is Lou Holtz has come out. He replied and he said, I can understand why Ryan Day did what he did. He doesn't want to talk about Michigan. Where he's 0-2. He doesn't want to talk about the big game coming up against Penn State and against Michigan again. So Lou Holtz, I give him all the credit in the world for firing back about this. But Ryan Day comes off as so goddamn insecure about when he is that. When Lou Holtz of all people, he goes after him like he's ready to throw hands. It was absolutely insane. So my jerk of the week is Ryan Day for wanting to literally fight an ancient Lou Holtz. I just thought the whole thing was ridiculous. And I'm glad Lou Holtz is still firing back. Good for him. I'm no Lou Holtz fan. But good for him for saying, I'm not going to take that bullshit. He fired right back. But Ryan Day.
If you're using Lou Holtz as bulletin board material, yeah,
exactly.
You were mentioning that bottle of wine thing for Cabrera.
Right.
There was a big stink about, like, what do you do? Just like pick up $2 chuck or something like.
Yeah.
And but I saw an article listing the various things other teams have given Cabrera.
Right.
And a lot of them would give him a bottle of wine. So that wasn't the only place. But they also donated to his foundation, like, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. So this one was just a bottle of wine.
Right.
So
that's hilarious. Which makes me see like the Houston Astros gave him a customized saddle and things like that, or I think the Yankees gave him a giant what was it, a Subway sign or something like that. No, so there were some interesting gifts, and here comes the A's. Oh my God, I forgot to get a housewarming gift, so they hit the party store next door. So oh my God, that was hilarious.
That was bad.
All right. With that, to start wrapping up the show, I think this is the time where Greg tells us about upcoming guests, social media, and all that fun stuff.
Yep. First of all, you can follow me on my or subscribe, even better. Subscribe to my Substack, gregino.substack.com, and you'll get my content in your inbox if you do that. Follow me on Twitter at Gregino. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. No show on the 10th of October.
My fault. That's my
fault. I'll be out of town. That's fine. And then we'll come back, but we'll come back nice and strong for you on the 24th with Keith Gay, former Red Wings beat writer for the Free Press and successful author. We'll talk to Keith about his books and the NHL and the Red Wings in general. And then 2 weeks after that, on November the 7th, our old friend Siddy Hall, our NBA stats guru, will be here to give us his assessment on the early goings of the Pistons season and the NBA. That'll be on November the 7th. So 2 good guests for you coming up. And I want to, as usual, thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up for this nonsense every 2 weeks. And thank you guys for making Tuesday nights so gosh darn fun.
All right. Now, Nick, you get the floor. Say whatever the hell you want.
All right. So probably the only relevant place to find me is on Twitter at Nick Milanovich. I usually jump in the fray and talk about Detroit sports. And so if you're a fan of Detroit sports, kind of join the crowd. And we love to just kind of exchange stories and traumas. We're there is kind of like this support group of trauma from like football, of course, and the last few years with baseball too, but and basketball and a little bit of hockey. God, it's all of them. But join us there, and love to increase the size of the group and have a conversation.
Exactly. All right. As always, want to give a shout out to Linda, who's actually off today, and she goes back in the ER tomorrow. So But she always works her ass off, and good news is that she said she's going to retire next June. So there will be I don't know how we're going to handle the podcast when I'm up north a hell of a lot more, but we will figure something out. But regardless of all that, if you want to listen to the show, if you want to spread the word about the show, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find the show at all the usual places podcasts are aggregated. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music. The kneejerks.net is the homepage where you'll find all the show notes. You'll find the links to all the social media. Find links to Greg's Substack. Please subscribe to all of that, guys. Please. And you can also get the MP3 straight from that webpage and do what you will with it. So I think it's about time to wrap things up. So we're going to be on a short hiatus. Like I said, I'll be in Florida when we would normally be doing another show. So we'll be about a month. We'll be back with Keith Gabe. To Greg's credit, he went back into his Rolodex and found some good guests for us. So next show, Keith Gabe, that'll be in about a month. So be on the lookout for us on social media if any more news about the show. With that, let's get the hell out of here. So until this time, about a month from now, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, guys. Good night, everybody.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
And Greg Eno, he just said ciao. So have a good night, everybody.